Hey, welcome back everyone. So this is part 2 of using the Wick editor to do the classic bouncing ball animation. So here's again my reference image here. And I'm just going to kind of follow along with it and go with it, and then I'll make tweaks along the way if I feel like maybe all these frames aren't needed. It does seem like quite a bit, so we'll see. So what I'm going to first do are the keyframes. So I'm looking at 1, 7, 12, 17, 21, 25, 28, and then probably 32. So right about those there. Then I'll go ahead and this is using a technique that's called pose to pose, where you go and you block in all the major poses, and then you break it down and you figure out, okay, what frames. Let's just look at frames 1 to 7. What frames would be the next important ones, and break down that part of the scene. And so I might say, okay, well, frame 5 is a breakdown, so that would be pretty important. Maybe frame 6, possibly frame 2, because that's where it's starting. And then you would get into, once you've done that and everything's looking pretty good, then you would get into straight ahead animation, and that's when you can go in and you can break down even further, and you can start doing some of the more the smaller frames as well, and then start filling in the gaps. So let's dive right in. Okay, so I'm back into Wick. I have my pencil and I have the settings that I had in the last video, so I'm going with kind of an animation blue here. Maybe change the opacity to maybe 40%, see what that looks like. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, so I'm going to draw frame 1 right here, just so I can kind of figure out the mass or the volume of the ball, and then I can take it from there. Okay, so not my best, not my worst either. So the cool thing about this is that I can now click on it with the cursor tool, and I can click and I can drag it, and I can basically place it wherever I want it to go. So I'm going to go ahead and put it right about here for frame 1. Okay, so now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find frame 7, and I'm going to go ahead and click and tap. So that places a new keyframe on frame 7, and I can't see frame 1 now. So I'm going to turn on onion skinning by coming over here and clicking on this right here. And you'll immediately see that frame 1 comes in, and it comes in tinted red because of a setting that I did in the very first video. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my pencil tool, and now I'm going to go ahead and draw that famous frame 7 with it squashing. Now here's the cool thing you can do. You could draw it as a perfect circle. And then you could grab the cursor tool, select it, and you could just squash it manually like this, maybe even a little further out. So you could do that. You could also just hand draw it and see what you like better. So use the tools, see what works best for you, and I would say end up using a combination of them. Okay, so there we are there. Next frame is 12. So again, find the frame, tap. Now you notice that frame 1 disappeared. Now I'm only seeing frame 7. If you'd like to see more frames, come down here to the timeline, and right here, this is the onion skinning. Just click and drag it further back, and that way you can see more frames. So I'll do that just for now. So here's frame 12. And again, I'm not worried too much about the position, because I can always take the cursor tool and just click and drag it and use the arrow keys and just kind of nudge it. So I do like that, because remember that Wick is actually still using all of this artwork and brushstrokes. These are all vectors, and so that's why they're really flexible, which is great. Okay, moving on. And you would continue like this. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'll pause, and then I'll come back and I'll have all the other keyframes put in there. Okay, so I'm back. I have my playhead here kind of in the middle, and I clicked and dragged the onion skinning handles so that way you could see most of them. Again, the previous frames are in red and the sort of future frames are there in blue. So they are changing color, so that's kind of cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and rewind here and just press play. And you can see it kind of hopping and bopping around. And there we are. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I did end up going to frame 32, even though frame 32 is off screen. I kind of ended up with frame 28 here being like that. So now the next step that I would do is I would come in here and I'd figure out, okay, what are the next most important frames? And I'd probably say like 5, maybe frame 8, 9, certainly the in-betweens here, 15, etc. And I go ahead and do that. You could copy and paste some of these frames. So for instance, frames 1, 2, and 3, it's not squashing or stretching yet. And so you could copy and paste those. So I'll go ahead and I'll show you how to do that if you haven't already figured it out. So I'll go back to frame 1 and grab the cursor tool and select frame 1. And with it there like that, just Command C or Control C, and then Command V or Control V. Whoops, actually, you know what? Sorry. I need to get to the frame before I paste it. So there I am there. So now I would go to, say, frame 2. Okay, I'm on frame 2, and then I would do Command V to paste it. Okay, so I forgot to do one little step before pasting. So if you want to use the paste technique, you select your object with the cursor tool. You press Command C or Control C to do it. Then you get the playhead to where you want the next frame to go. And you don't just paste it. If you do paste it, it will actually become part of the previous frame. What you need to do is, with your playhead where you want the next frame to go, you have to come here and click on Add Frame. When you click on Add Frame, now you'll see that the timeline has split up. And now when you paste Command V or Control V, now the copy goes right where the old one was, but now you can go ahead and you can move it and you can get it over where you want. And it is there. Typically, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't just go to frame 2 and 3 and 4. You can do that. That's the straight ahead way of animating. I'm going to just undo all of this here. So I might say, okay, on frame 5, that's where I really want that stretch. That's the extreme, or sorry, frame 6 is the extreme stretch. But I'm going to do 5 where it's starting to stretch. So I'm going to go to frame 5. I'm going to add a frame, go back to my pencil tool, and this is where somewhere around here it's going to be like this. Not too much stretching, but a pretty good amount. Okay, then the next extreme is going to be frame 6. So don't forget to add in a frame. There's 6, and now it's going to be doing, again, it's not in the reference image, it's not contacting, but you can play around with that. So it's most oval-like. So maybe something like that. Maybe what I need to do is move frame 5 a little further away. No big deal if you feel like that's the case. So select frame 5. Make sure you go to the cursor tool, and then you can just nudge it away or up or something like that. And again, that's one of the nice things about this being vector, is that everything's very adjustable. Okay, I'll grab frame 6, kind of nudge it over here a little bit more, and something like that, and hit save. Okay, so that's that. So now I would go in here and I would go ahead and do frames 2, 3, and 4. This is another one of the animation, or the principles of animation. So this is ease in. So you'll see that frame 1 and 2 are overlapping each other, and frame 2 and 3 are just barely touching each other. So I'm on frame 2, add a frame, go back to my pencil tool, and do some overlapping. Okay, again, if you wanted to move a little bit slower, you can do that. You can scale it up a little bit. Again, you want the volume to be there. I'm going to go ahead now and copy that. I'm going to go to frame 3, paste, or sorry, create a new keyframe, then paste. So there's my frame 3. And so this one, now this one should be just touching, right? That's what the reference shows. So I'm probably going to have to move things around a little bit. I'll press play and see what it looks like. It could be terrible. Now what it's looking like is it's looking like that I drew the ball too big on the frames, and so I'm kind of running out of space. So I'd rather learn this early on in the animation so I can make adjustments than at the end when I'm all done. But I'll go ahead and I'll press play. Okay, so I mean the timing is pretty off. I'm not happy with it, but it's getting there. It's pretty slow. I think I would like a little bit more distance in between, so it really feels like it's coming down with some greater force. So what we can actually do, and then this will be the last thing that I do here, is that we can start off on frame 1, select the ball with the cursor tool, shift, click and drag, and just make the ball whatever size you want it to go with. Okay, and you can use the arrow keys. Now, you could just go through, and again, you could redraw if you wanted to, honestly. I would rather kind of eyeball it here. Yeah, so I think I just started drawing a little bit too large. Okay, so this definitely feels a little bit better. This one's just touching. There we go. So that's already a better start. So I just need to scale down all of my frames. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that. And then that'll take us to the end of this, since this is getting to be a long video. In the next video, we'll have basically all of our frames, and then we'll do the clean animation pass, and then we'll do some colors and some shadows and add in some little touches, things like that, to make it look a little nicer. Thank you very much for checking these videos out. I appreciate all the support that people have given me, and make some good stuff out there. Thanks, everyone.